folks.
That was the one Benny that came. And when I moved on to staff, the guys over there knew me and Mars, and so that it didn't just get cut off because I left the company. They continued to help me out whenever they could. And I told them I want to make sure that I'm not putting some other troop that wants to talk on Mars. I don't want you to stop to put me ahead of them or anything else. It's just if you've got a dead time, why. And a lot of folks, a lot of them troops didn't even know about Mars at that time, I think.
And wasn't there one time like there was some bombing or something and you were able to get a phone call through so mom knew you were okay or something like that?
Well, when it was right after Tet, I believe. The timing is a little fuzzy, but the VC were sending rockets onto Tan Son Nhut, and you could see them. We could watch the rockets come in, and you couldn't see them actually hit because there were buildings between, but you could see them come in, and then they would go boom, and then a few seconds later it'd be a boom closer and a boom closer. What they would do is they would just walk the rockets right across the airport, and so we're sitting there one night, and again, I'm thinking I was the only officer in our compound at that time. I was the duty officer for the night or some such thing. Anyway, they started with these rockets and they were just coming right across, and you just watch them coming right directly towards our compound. Boom, boom, and getting closer. And there was not anything you could do to get out of the way. We did have some bunkers that had been built, but some sandbag bumpers. Okay, sandbag bunkers that we built, but there was nothing really strong overhead or anything like that. And so they're walking towards us, and you just see them. Well, the last one coming towards us hit the chapel across the road from us, and we sat there expecting the next one to come into our compound for some time, but they had quit sending them, and so we got none. However, within 2 or 3 days, every one of these Quonset huts had cement slabs that the Quonset hut was built on. Within 3 or 4 days, every slab just had tunnels all under the place, under that cement slab, because all the troops were building under there to be able to at least be protected by the cement slab. Anyway, I during Tet, and as I say, I just changed just then to take over Signal Support Company. Signal Support, my cable people were responsible for all the overhead cable all the overhead and other cable in Saigon that belonged to the military. And you would think that a cable, and all the cable, by the way, we didn't have any buried cable hardly at all, and most all the cable was overhead. And you would think that a cable running on telephone poles up above you, that not much would be done to that at any given time. In other words, you'd think that people would miss it, but you would be absolutely amazed at how much of that cable was shot up during Tet. I mean, we spent weeks and weeks restoring some communication. Well, not some communication. But one of the high priority repairs was the military intelligence compound that was outside of the city limits of Saigon. It was perhaps I don't know, maybe a mile from along rice paddy roads, along rice paddy streets from our compound. But what you have to, you go out there and you drive along these raised areas between rice paddies, and the telephone poles would go right along that, and then you head on and out to the MI battalion compound. And first of all, we had to make a survey out there to see if we could see the damage, because you can often tell from down below where actual damage is to the cables just by eyeballing it as you drive past. And so, as I recall, I had myself and my driver and a couple of guys in the back of our Jeep. We were driving along, and then maybe two trucks, maybe a total of 10 or 12 of us anyway, driving along. We're totally wearing our flak jackets and steel pots and totally armed and everything, because we knew there's a possibility where some things could pop up. So we were driving along, taking with the driver was looking forward, of course, but most of us then were watching the cable as we drive by to see the holes, and there was an amazing number of holes in different cables up there. And we come to this place, and my driver said, "Sir, look ahead." I looked ahead, and there was a dead soldier beside the road. These are all ARVNs, our VC, our North Koreans. I think they were all VC or ARVN. And we're driving on, and we come a little further, and there's some more dead guys. And pretty soon they were about every 10, 15 feet, dead guys laying by the road. And we looked over here, I would say probably 100 yards. And there was, in the jungle area there was a U almost. And on one side of that U, you could see the guys in uniform, which are the ARVN, and on the other side, you could see the guys in the black pajamas with the straw hats on, who were the VC, and they were firing at each other. And I swear they weren't more than 100 yards away from us, football field length, and they weren't paying the slightest attention to us. Couldn't have cared less who we were or what we were. They were fighting each other, and you could see the gun flashes, and you could see the powder going up, the smoke going up from the firing, and they were just firing at each other. And they had obviously come down this road, and because we were seeing guys with both uniforms on. Well, I have to say that we kind of hurried along a little bit then, and got over to the MI group, and made note of what we'd seen, and so then we were stuck with an idea of how to get back home. We weren't very far from Saigon. We were only a few blocks from Saigon, and the other road that went down to Saigon, there was a helicopter there just beating the dickens out of a few buildings with rockets and so forth. And he was flying there, and so we looked up and waited until he flew away, I suppose, to get fuel or something. And we said, well, I don't see anyone firing back at him, so we should just make a run for it, which we did. We made a run for it. It was most surreal because there wasn't a shot fired at us, I don't think, although my driver did find a bullet hole in the Jeep soon thereafter, but don't know if it came from that or what. But it was really surreal because we probably drove, I don't even think a mile, I'd say a half mile, down towards Saigon. That's how we weren't very far out. And you come to this area that has roadside little places for people to buy sodas and food and things like that. Kids are playing in the street. Everything's open, and yet you know that not more than a half mile or a mile away, there's a regular battle going on between the VC and the ARVN. But these folks over here, totally life is normal. And
You said VC and the what?
the VC and the ARVN,
What's an ARVN?
the Republic of Vietnam
Oh,
Army.
okay.
The ARVN is the South Vietnamese,
Okay.
and they're not any distance away. And over here, this close to that, all that going on, and the helicopter blowing up buildings and so forth. And here, life is as normal.
Well,
Kids,
the
friends,
helicopter was what side? Was that American?
yeah, that was American.
And they were blowing up what type of buildings?
Just regular buildings along the road there. But again, it was probably half a mile or a quarter of a mile or something away from these
Saigon.
from these groups that were
Okay.
just
From the other
normal. But it was just so strange to me to see life is totally normal here, and yet you've got a war going on up there. You know?
Wild.